Most people look at a blank fence, an empty railing, or a bare wall and think, maybe I should hang something decorative there. But if your goal is to grow more food with less space, that empty vertical surface is not decoration space. It is wasted production space. Here is the simple idea most beginner gardeners overlook. Food does not only have to grow flat on the ground. Some of the most productive plants in a home garden are vines. Because they climb upward instead of spreading across your beds. That means they can turn fences, arches, trellises, balconies, and even awkward corners into living food systems. And the best part is this: many vines do not need to be replanted again and again every season. Once they are established, they can return, spread, climb, flower, fruit, and keep feeding you with far less effort than a traditional vegetable bed. In this video, we will look at 9 powerful edible vines that can transform unused vertical space into a long-term source of food. Let's begin with a vine that looks tropical, but can actually survive in places much colder than most people expect. Passion flower, especially Passiflora incarnata, also known as maypop, is one of the most surprising edible vines you can grow. At first glance, it looks like something that belongs in a warm rainforest. The flowers are almost unreal, with layered purple, white, and lavender structures that look more like natural architecture than a normal blossom. But this plant is not just beautiful. It can also produce edible fruit. The fruits usually ripen from late summer into autumn. When they are fully mature, the skin turns softer and the inside holds a sweet, tangy, fragrant pulp. The flavor is often compared to a mix of guava, citrus, and tropical fruit. It is not the kind of fruit you commonly find in supermarkets, which makes it even more valuable for a home garden. Another reason passion flower deserves attention is that it can come back year after year in many regions. The top growth may die back in winter, but the roots can survive underground and push out new vines again in spring. In suitable areas, it can spread through underground runners and become more productive over time. It is also useful beyond fruit. The leaves and flowers have a long history of use in herbal teas, especially as a gentle calming tea. Of course, anyone using plants medicinally should be careful and research properly, but as a garden plant, passion flower offers beauty, food, pollinator value, and long-term growth in one package. Give it a sunny fence, a strong trellis, or a quiet corner where it can climb, and it can turn that empty space into something alive, beautiful, and edible. Now let's talk about one of the best vines for anyone who struggles to keep leafy greens alive during hot weather. Regular spinach is wonderful in cool seasons, but it has one major weakness. When the temperature rises, it quickly bolts, turns bitter, and stops giving you the tender leaves you actually want to eat. Malabar spinach works completely differently. It is not true spinach, but it fills the same role in the kitchen. Instead of collapsing in summer heat, it thrives in it. Warm weather, humidity, and strong sunlight are exactly the conditions that push this vine to grow faster. The leaves are thick, glossy, and heart-shaped, with a mild earthy flavor and a slightly peppery note. Because the leaves have more body than regular spinach, they hold up especially well in soups, stir-fries, and cooked dishes. They do not disappear into a watery mess the moment they touch heat. Another reason this plant is so productive is the way it responds to harvesting. The more you pick, the more side shoots it produces. If you regularly pinch off the tender tips and harvest the larger leaves, the vine keeps branching instead of slowing down. That makes it a true cut-and-come-again green. In a small space, even 1 or 2 vines on a fence or trellis can provide a steady supply of fresh leaves through the hottest part of the season, exactly when many other greens have already failed. In colder climates, Malabar spinach is usually grown as an annual because frost will kill it, but in warm regions, it may self-seed easily and return with very little help. Save a few seeds at the end of the season, and your future supply can become almost free. For anyone who wants reliable summer greens, this is one of the smartest vertical crops to grow. Next is chayote, one of the most underrated fruit vines in the world. This plant is originally from Central America and has been cultivated for a very long time because it is not just a fruiting vine. It is more like a complete edible system. The crisp green fruits are the part most people recognize. They can be sliced into soups, stir-fries, stews, salads, or cooked like a mild squash. But the fruit is only the beginning. The young shoots can also be harvested and cooked like tender greens. The leaves are edible when prepared properly. Even the seed inside the fruit is edible, and in suitable conditions, the plant can also develop large starchy roots underground. That is why chayote is often described as a multi-purpose survival crop. Planting it is unusual, because you do not usually plant loose seeds. You plant the whole fruit. Once the fruit begins to sprout, it can be placed partly into the soil with the sprouting end exposed. From there, the vine can grow extremely fast when the weather is warm. A mature chayote vine needs strong support. This is not a tiny decorative climber. It can cover a trellis, fence, or pergola quickly, and in warm regions. A well-established plant can produce a very large number of pear-shaped fruits in one season. The first year may be slower because the plant is building its root system, but by the second or third year, in frost-free climates, it can become dramatically more productive. In colder areas, chayote is usually treated more carefully. You can sprout it indoors before warm weather arrives, then move it outside after the danger of frost has passed. For gardeners who want one plant that gives fruit, shoots, greens, and long-term abundance, chayote is one of the strongest choices. Now we come to a vine that deserves far more attention than it gets today, the American groundnut. Its scientific name is Apius americana, and despite the name, it is not the same thing as a peanut. It is a native North American perennial vine that produces food in two different ways. Above the ground, the plant can produce edible bean-like pods. Below the ground, it forms chains of starchy tubers that grow along the roots, almost like beads on a string. Those tubers are the real treasure. They are rich, filling, and often described as having a nutty flavor when cooked. Historically, they were an important food source for indigenous communities, and they later helped early settlers survive difficult periods when other crops failed. One of the most valuable things about this plant is that it is perennial. Once established, it does not need to be replanted every year. The vine can die back in winter, then return again from the underground tubers when the growing season comes back. It is also useful for difficult garden spaces. Many food crops demand perfect sunny beds and well-drained soil, but American groundnut is more flexible. It can tolerate moist ground, partial shade, and heavier soils better than many common vegetables. It also belongs to the legume family, which means it can work with soil bacteria to fix nitrogen. In simple terms, it can help improve the soil while also producing food. Harvesting is usually done carefully in autumn. You loosen the soil and collect some of the tubers, while leaving enough behind so the plant can continue growing in future years. For a food forest, a native plant garden, or any space where you want long-term low-maintenance calories, American groundnut is a quiet but powerful choice. Another vine that many people completely underestimate is akebia, often sold under the name chocolate vine. In many garden centers, akebia is treated mainly as an ornamental plant. People buy it because it grows fast, covers fences quickly, and produces small fragrant flowers in early spring. But what many gardeners do not realize is that this vine can also produce edible fruit. When the fruit ripens in early autumn, the pod usually turns purple or grayish-purple and begins to split open naturally. Inside, there is a soft, translucent pulp surrounding many small black seeds. The pulp has a gentle sweetness, sometimes described as light, delicate, and slightly vanilla-like. It is not a heavy, sugary fruit. It is more unusual than that, which is exactly why it can feel so special when grown at home. Akebia is especially interesting because it can offer more than one harvest. In spring, the young tender shoots can be cooked as a vegetable. Later in the season, the fruit pulp can be eaten when ripe. In Japanese cooking, even the outer skin of the mature fruit has traditional uses, often prepared with savory fillings or cooked dishes. That means this plant is not just a privacy vine, it can become a three-part food source. Another major advantage is shade tolerance. Many fruiting vines demand strong full sun, but akebia can handle partial shade better than most. That makes it useful for north-facing fences, side yards, or corners where other food crops struggle. It can take a few years before the vine gives a serious fruit harvest, so patience matters. But in the meantime, it grows quickly, covers empty vertical space, and creates a lush green screen. For anyone building a food forest or trying to make difficult spaces productive, akebia is one of the most overlooked edible vines worth considering. Scarlet runner bean is one of those plants that many people grow for beauty first, and food second. That is understandable. Because the flowers are stunning, the vine produces bright scarlet red blossoms that can make a fence or trellis look alive with color. Hummingbirds, bees, and other pollinators are strongly attracted to them. So the plant can support the wider garden as well. But the real value of scarlet runner bean is that it gives you several harvests from the same vine. The first harvest comes when the pods are still young and tender. At this stage, they can be picked and cooked like green beans. They are best harvested before they become tough, while the pods are still fresh and flexible. The second harvest comes if you let the pods mature longer. Inside, the beans swell into large, beautiful seeds, often marked with purple, black, or pink patterns. These can be used as shelling beans, with a rich flavor that works well in hearty dishes. The third harvest comes when the pods dry fully on the vine. At that point, the beans can be stored as dry beans for winter cooking. One plant can give you fresh pods, shelling beans, and storage beans, depending on when you harvest. Scarlet runner bean also helps the soil. Like many legumes, it can form a relationship with beneficial bacteria around its roots and fix nitrogen. That means it can contribute fertility back into the garden instead of only taking nutrients away. In warmer regions, especially around USDA Zone 7 and above, the roots may survive winter and return the next year. In colder climates, it is usually grown from seed each season. But the seeds are large, affordable, and easy to plant. For a fence that needs color, pollinators, and real food production, scarlet runner bean is a simple but powerful choice. Now let's move to a vine that can solve one of the most frustrating problems in summer gardening. Many people love growing zucchini, but zucchini plants often have a weakness. In some regions, they are attacked by squash vine borers. These pests enter the hollow stems, damage the plant from the inside, and can cause a healthy-looking squash plant to collapse very quickly. Tromboncino squash is different. This Italian heirloom grows as a vigorous climbing vine, and one of its biggest advantages is its solid, tougher stem structure. Because the stems are not hollow like many common summer squash varieties, the plant is naturally much harder for squash vine borers to destroy. That makes tromboncino especially valuable for gardeners who have lost zucchini plants year after year. The vine can grow very long, so it needs strong support. A fence, cattle panel, arch, or sturdy trellis is ideal. When the fruits hang in the air, they stay cleaner, straighter, and less likely to rot on wet soil. The harvest is also flexible. If you pick the fruit young, around the size of a tender summer squash, the texture is firm, mild, and slightly sweet. It can be sliced, sautéed, grilled, or used in the same way as zucchini. But if you leave some fruits on the vine until autumn, the skin hardens and the flesh becomes more like winter squash. That means one plant can give you both fresh summer eating and longer storing food for later. Tromboncino loves warmth and space, so it is not a plant to squeeze into a tiny pot without support. But if you have an empty fence or a strong vertical structure, this vine can turn summer heat into a serious harvest. Cucamelon is one of the best edible vines for gardeners who want something productive, unusual, and surprisingly easy to grow. It is also known as Mexican sour gherkin, and the fruit looks almost too cute to be real. Each one is about the size of a grape, with a pattern that makes it look like a tiny watermelon. But when you bite into it, the flavor is much closer to cucumber, with a bright sour note that feels almost like a squeeze of lime. This makes cucamelon perfect for fresh snacking, salads, pickles, lunch boxes, and small garden harvests that feel special without needing complicated cooking. The plant itself is tougher than it looks. Once the weather is warm and the vine begins climbing, it can grow quickly with very little attention. It does best with a trellis or netting, because the vines are thin but active, and the small fruits are easier to find when the plant is lifted off the ground. For a stronger start, the seeds can be started indoors several weeks before the last expected frost, then transplanted outside after the soil has warmed. In warm weather, One healthy plant can produce a steady supply of fruit through the season. Another interesting feature is what happens underground. Cucamelon can form small tubers beneath the soil. In warmer climates, those tubers may survive winter and regrow the next season. In colder areas, they can be lifted, stored somewhere cool and dry, then replanted when warm weather returns. That means cucamelon can be treated almost like a returning crop instead of only a one-season novelty. For anyone with a small trellis, a sunny fence, or even a container with support, cucamelon is a fun, resilient, high-reward vine that turns a small space into a steady source of crisp little fruits. Hyacinth bean is a vine that can easily fool people at first. With its purple stems, deep green leaves, violet flowers, and glossy purple pods, it often looks like something planted only for decoration. But behind that ornamental appearance is an old and important food crop that has been grown across parts of Asia and Africa for thousands of years. This vine grows quickly in warm weather and can climb over a trellis or fence in a single season. It handles heat well, tolerates difficult conditions better than many garden vegetables, and can keep producing even when the weather feels harsh. The young leaves can be harvested and cooked as greens. The mature pods can also be picked while they are still tender and prepared much like green beans later in the season. The mature seeds can become a valuable protein-rich food source. But this is the most important point: immature hyacinth bean seeds must be prepared correctly. The dried seeds contain natural compounds that can be unsafe if eaten raw or undercooked. Traditional food cultures that use this crop know that mature seeds need thorough cooking, usually boiling well in water, before they are eaten. So this is not a plant to treat casually. The young pods and leaves are commonly cooked, and the mature seeds require proper preparation. Once that safety rule is understood, hyacinth bean becomes a very useful vertical crop. It gives beauty, shade, pollinator interest, edible greens, tender pods, and storage beans from one climbing plant. It can also help improve soil because, like other legumes, it can work with root bacteria to fix nitrogen. That makes it valuable not only for the food it produces, but also for the growing system around it. If you want a vine that looks ornamental but works like a serious food crop, hyacinth bean deserves a place on the list. When you look at all 9 vines together, the lesson is simple. Your garden is not limited to the soil directly under your feet. Every empty fence, wall, railing, arch, balcony edge, or forgotten corner can become a productive food-growing surface. Some of these vines give fruit, some give greens, some give beans, shoots, flowers, or even underground tubers. A few of them can return year after year, slowly becoming stronger and more productive with less work from you. That is the real power of vertical food growing. Instead of rebuilding the same garden from zero every spring, you can create living structures that keep giving back season after season. So choose one empty vertical space, start with one vine that fits your climate, give it support, give it time, and let nature do more of the work.